Chapter 4. The following morning, the bunkhouse was full of talk. Marianne heard snippets as she made space on the tables for more toast, or cleared away the cooked breakfast plates. It wasn't her job to do so. The guests were meant to bring things up to the hatch, but often she found it more efficient to do things herself. They lingered over their tea and coffee once they'd finished eating, then dumped everything at the hatch in one go. Much easier to keep on top of the clearing up so that she could stick to her routine. "Don't you think, Marianne?" Claire, the Trustafarian archaeologist, said as she added oat milk to her coffee. Oat milk. 10 years ago, no one would have heard of it, and it had become a staple. You could almost guarantee that at least a third of your guests would be vegan. I mean, no one even really knows that there's anything wrong. Maybe she didn't fancy going home with her arsey boyfriend and got a bus. "Shropshire Hills Explorer goes past the bottom of the lane," her friend Riley said, "and the bog shuttle." "The police will have checked with the bus companies, and they'll have been asking in the village," said Martin Davis. He and the silent Joe seemed to have hit it off with the younger diggers and were sharing their table. "Anyway, what about her car being left in the lay-by?" "Wasn't her car, was it?" Claire said. "Maybe it belongs to the arsey boyfriend." "But isn't he on holiday?" said Lucy, the love-struck teacher, briefly tearing her eyes away from Russell to join in with the gossip from the neighbouring table. "The owner of the car, I mean. He can't be the guy she was with." "I reckon it's down to the dig," Riley said. "Like, maybe we unleashed spirits when we found that grave under the barrow. Same day, wasn't it?" Claire made a face at him. "It was an Iron Age woman, Riley, not bloody Tutankhamun." Tittle-tattle, gossip and speculation to brighten everyone's start to the day, though out of the window it was bright enough already. The sun had already burned away the overnight mist, and there was a fresh breeze. If the devil had been in his chair the night before, he'd got bored and gone elsewhere. "Don't you think, Marianne?" Claire said again, though regarding what, Marianne wasn't sure. "I think we should all just hope that it's been a mistake," she said. "Let's stick with your bus theory, and hope we get a call from the police soon to say she's safe and sound." There had been a bulletin on the local news the night before. Surely someone would have seen it and phoned the police helpline. Maybe even the girl herself, startled to know there had been a search out after her. It niggled her, though, as she laid out the last of the packed lunch supplies and turned a deaf ear to Alice, who yattered on while she peeled carrots for the day's batch of cakes. Surely it was too much of a coincidence. 2 young women in bright blue jackets seen running from a man in lonely walking spots. And only a week apart. It must be the same girl, the same couple. Her head was still full of it as she set out just after noon. Mental preoccupation always fueled her efficiency, and she'd had Alice going around the house like a whirlwind with her vacuum cleaner, while she tackled the bathrooms. That day's supper of lentil bake with courgettes, tomatoes and potatoes from her garden — the meat-eaters could supplement it with leftover breakfast sausages if they felt the need — took little time to prepare and rested in the fridge ready to pop in the Rayburn later. A batch of scones and 3 carrot cakes cooled on wire racks beneath clean tea towels, and the rest of the day was hers. With the dogs at her heels, ecstatic to be out of their pen earlier than usual, she took the track up towards her cottage, pausing only briefly to check on the menagerie with promises that she would feed them and poo-pick the field on her return. A sandwich and a bottle of water weighed down her small rucksack, and she planned to take a route where she was likely to meet few, if any, people. Beyond her house, the cinder track petered out, dwindling to an overgrown footpath which snaked up towards the Devil's Chair through slim-trunked ranks of self-seeded larch, birch and ash. Beside the path, tall spears of pink digitalis reared to head height. Something about the wet June and July must have suited it, and aconite, so beautiful and so deadly, sprouted from between rocks. Bracken and brambles clutched at her trousers in the narrower spots, making her glad that today, at least, it was dry. At the top of Perkins Beach — all the valleys of the Stiperstones are beaches or dingles, as those of the Long Mynd are batches and gutters — a main footpath, part of the Shropshire Way, led from the Devil's Chair towards Green Hill, where the archaeologists were working. Aware that with the day's fine weather it would be well populated, she took a small path to the left, which traversed the upper part of Perkins Beach towards the Devil's Pool. The dogs liked the route, which was so steep that few walkers bothered with it, particularly as the main path covered roughly the same ground, only several contours higher on the map. There was a haphazard descent to where the brook ran between rocky banks overhung with gorse, a breath-stopping leap across when it was in full spate, and then a scramble up the other side towards the pool from which the brook sprang, hidden amongst another copse of birch and ash. Twisted hawthorn straggled up between the taller trees, providing a spiky handhold when the slope was too steep, and several times she almost slipped. As she watched the dogs bound effortlessly, she remembered her walk on Titterston Clee and the thought that perhaps it was time to invest in walking poles. Something about the idea made her feel old, though, as if by accepting the need for them, she was admitting some bodily weakness, a slippery slope from which she would never return. She thought about the girl in the blue coat then, and whether she had made it up Perkins Beach to the main footpath 2 days before. Perhaps she had run all the way to the Devil's Chair, on past Manstone Rock on the Stiperstones Ridge, and down the boulder track towards the car park at the Knolls. She might have hitched a lift back across the sheep-strewn plateau towards Bridges, and there found the main road towards Bishop's Castle and Craven Arms. The police inquiries seemed well-intentioned but vain. Presumably, if there was anything to worry about, someone close to her would have reported her missing. The boyfriend, maybe, and the police would know who she was. Instead, all the police had was the alarm raised by the farm worker after the altercation and the fact that no one had returned for the car. Odd that no one had come forward after the news item, though, and presumably the police had used local social media groups to trace her. If there had been news, D.I. Fraser would have been in touch so she could put her guest's mind at ease. High above the ridge towards the Devil's Chair, the usual flock of hooded crows was circling. When Marianne had first lived there, she had thought that the crows must be targeted at something, the carcass of a sheep or a grouse perhaps, but she had learned over time it was just their way. Sometimes, of course, they had found carrion, but as often as not they were just playing or doing whatever hooded crows do. A couple of buzzards surfed the air currents over beyond Cranberry Rock, higher than the crows and paying them no attention, mewing like kittens. Once in the trees, the terrain levelled out a bit, and Marianne climbed a small ridge beyond which was the drop to the pool. Pip and Maggie had run on ahead and were tussling over something in the grass, a dead rabbit perhaps, or just a smell. Pip had been known to dig halfway to Australia for the sheer joy of it. Maggie won the scrap and dashed towards her. "What's that you've got there, crazy dog? Come on, hand it over." At the sight of the shoe, the hairs on the back of Marianne's neck stood to attention, one by one, wet and well worn, but not old. A woman's walking shoe, Merrill's, dark blue with paler flashes. The colour brought to mind the missing girl's coat, and a flutter of butterflies flooded Marianne's stomach. It was hardly the weather for a swim, nor was the pool a place for a barefoot paddle. Light filtered down through the birches to the gleam of water some 20 feet below, green and still. In its centre, a splash of bright blue reflected the July sky. Today, it was studded with clouds, yet its reflection in the water was clear. Slithering and scrambling down over wet rock and tufted grass, she clutched at clumps of rushes to slow her descent. The dogs overtook her, and she shouted at them to stay before they reached the pool's edge. It was like a pastiche of Millet's Ophelia, only where Ophelia lay supine, this young woman was prone, one hand clutching a bouquet of rushes in place of wild flowers. Water pooled in furrows on the bright jacket, and in her short, dark hair droplets glittered like jewels. There was no doubt the girl was dead. Even so, Marianne found herself up to her knees in the water, feeling for a pulse. The skin was cold to the touch, a bluish white. She drew her hand away slowly, her own heartbeat filling her ears. Dimly she was aware of the dogs barking. Pip sharp, Maggie deeper. She dried her hands on her fleece and felt in the pocket for her phone. Her fingers were cold and clumsy, hovering over the 9 to tap it 3 times before she remembered Georgie Fraser's card tucked into the case. It took her 3 attempts to dial the number correctly. "D.I. Fraser," The detective sounded impatient. "Hello?" In the background were the sounds of people talking and the ting of an old-fashioned cash register. Marianne knew it well. The village shop had made a virtue of keeping itself firmly in the 1970s. Her tongue seemed stuck to the roof of her mouth and words would not come. She swallowed, saliva helping it free. Her voice sounded very loud in the stillness of the hanging valley. "It's Marianne Leonard. I think I've found your missing girl."